There is a specific kind of person this video is about. And if you are that person, you will know it within the next 30 seconds. You walk into a room. To everyone else, it is just a room. A few people are talking. The faint smell of coffee, a quiet afternoon. But for you, your brain has already finished its 360-degree scan. You notice the avoided glance between two people across the room. You caught the forced pitch of a smile that looked right but didn't reach the eyes. You heard the sentence that sounded polite on the surface but was vibrating underneath with something that felt like distance, or hostility, or performance. Nobody else caught any of that. But you caught all of it, simultaneously, automatically, without trying. Most people would call this a gift. You're so perceptive. You always just know. And there is a part of you that understands what they mean. But here is what they don't know. What they can't know unless they live it. This does not turn off. Not at the party. Not during the meeting. Not at midnight when the house is quiet and you are lying in the dark dissecting a look someone gave you 4 days ago. This is not a superpower you put down when you're done with it. It is a lens that fuses with how you see everything. And today we are going to decode exactly why your mind works this way, where it comes from, and how you stop it from quietly swallowing your life. The origin of the radar. Psychology identifies 2 paths that lead here. The first is nature. Some people are born what psychologist Elaine Aron identified as a highly sensitive person. This is not a disorder. It is a measurable neurological trait found in roughly 15 to 20% of the population. The HSP nervous system functions like an ultra-fine filter, letting almost everything through that most nervous systems would discard. Every emotional shift in the room arrives fully formed and demands attention. The world has always been this intense for you, and this is not sensitivity as weakness. It is sensitivity as depth. Both things are true simultaneously. The second path is different. This kind of awareness wasn't something you were born with. It was something you learned to survive. Psychologists call it hypervigilance. Imagine being a child in a home where the emotional weather had no pattern, where a parent's mood could shift without warning, from warmth to coldness, and you could never predict which version would walk through the door. In that environment, a child cannot afford innocence, so the brain builds a radar system. You learn to read the sound of car tires in the driveway and know from that sound alone what kind of night it will be. You learn to measure the force of a cabinet door closing and translate it into precise emotional data. Your amygdala, the brain's threat detection center, enters a state of permanent activation and writes a message into your operating system. The world is not reliably safe. You must scan everything. You must always be ready. And here is what nobody ever tells the child who builds this radar. It works. It keeps you safe. It helps you navigate an environment that genuinely required navigating. The tragedy is not that you built it. The tragedy is that no one ever told you when it was safe to put it down. So you carried it into every classroom, every relationship, every workplace, every ordinary Tuesday. And that is where the weight comes from. What this looks like every day. The first sign is constant analysis. For most people, a conversation is just a conversation. You talk, they talk. It ends. For you, it is 2 things happening simultaneously. On the surface, you're present, engaged, smiling. Underneath, you are taking detailed notes. You registered the pause that lasted a beat too long. You noticed the word they chose and the 3 words they didn't. You felt the energy shift when a particular topic came up. And when the conversation ends, you don't walk away from it. You take it with you. You audit it on the drive home. You reconstruct it in the shower. Until somewhere around midnight, you are still in a conversation that ended 6 hours ago. Here is a moment you've probably lived. Someone sends you a message. Simple, short. Hey, we need to talk. For most people, this is a sentence. For you, it is an event. You analyze the punctuation, the absence of a warmth signal, the phrasing, what we specifically implies. By the time you have the conversation, which turns out to be completely mundane, you have already lived through 17 versions of it. You arrive exhausted to a situation that required almost no energy at all. This is the hidden marathon. Most people see someone who had a quiet day. What actually happened is that your brain ran a full cognitive sprint before breakfast. The second sign is hyper self-awareness. You don't just experience emotions, You observe yourself experiencing them. You don't just feel anxious, you analyze whether the anxiety is proportionate, judge yourself for having it. Compare your reaction to how a more regulated person would be handling it. Psychologists call this metacognition, thinking about your own thinking. In healthy doses, it is the foundation of emotional intelligence. In excess, which is where you live, it becomes something else, dancing while staring at your reflection in a mirror. You might not miss a step, but you've lost the experience of dancing. The third sign is the loneliest. When you see this deeply, you begin to see the backstage of human behavior. A compliment arrives, and your brain immediately scans for what it might be adjacent to. An apology is offered, and you feel where it stops short of the full accountability it would need to genuinely reach you. Psychologists call this the loss of relational innocence, not naivety. The ability to receive a moment simply, to let a kindness be a kindness, to be in a relationship without simultaneously analyzing it. This is why you can feel profoundly lonely in a room full of people who love you. Not because they don't, but because the way you experience connection requires a transparency that ordinary human interaction almost never provides. The fourth sign is empathy that functions like weather instead of like a choice. You don't decide to feel what the people around you are feeling. You just do. Through mirror neurons, brain cells that simulate another person's emotional state within your own nervous system, you feel the anxiety of the person next to you on the bus before your conscious mind has even registered it. You walk into a room where an argument happened 2 hours ago, and you feel the residue. And without choosing to, you become the emotional regulator of every room you enter. You soften your voice. You adjust your energy. You notice who needs what and move accordingly, all without anyone asking, all while no one in the room knows this is happening. And then you go home and wonder why you're exhausted from a day where nothing happened. The fifth sign enters the body. Your insular cortex, the region responsible for processing internal physical signals, is remarkably sensitive. Your heart beats slightly faster after a second cup of coffee. For most people, that's just a heartbeat. For your nervous system, it's a data point. Your brain evaluates it, the body responds to the evaluation. Cortisol releases, heart rate increases, which produces more signals, which the brain evaluates again, a system feeding itself, with no natural exit point. When you place all 5 of these together, what emerges is a life organized entirely around protection, not presence. You have replaced the experience of living with the project of managing living, and somewhere in that replacement, quietly, your life stopped being something you were inside and became something you were supervising. From laser to candle, here is the truth. You cannot turn off the vision. What you can change is the relationship you have with it. Specifically, what you choose to carry and what you choose to put down. The first principle, observe but don't personalize. Not every silence is a verdict. Not every short reply is someone pulling away from you. People have entire inner lives that have nothing to do with you. Your nervous system interprets ambiguity as a threat, but ambiguity is not a threat. It is just the ordinary incompleteness of human communication. The second principle, feel but don't fix. You are allowed to feel anxious without diagnosing the anxiety. Feelings are not problems to be solved. They are states to be moved through. The fastest way to extend a difficult feeling is to analyze it. Instead, name it simply. There is anxiety here. There is sadness here. And then do nothing with it. Let it be present without requiring it to explain itself. Psychologists call this affect tolerance. For the hyper-aware person, building it is not a small thing. It is the foundation of a different way of living. The third principle, notice but don't absorb. Seeing someone's pain does not make you responsible for resolving it. Empathy without boundaries is not a virtue. It is a pattern learned in childhood. When you were the small one, reading the room to keep things safe, but you are no longer the small one, and the room no longer needs saving. You can be present with someone's struggle without disappearing into it. That distinction between being present with something and being consumed by it is the line between empathy as a gift and empathy as a cost. When these 3 principles begin to take root, something shifts. Not the awareness itself, the quality of it. It stops being a laser, relentless, exposing, burning everything it touches, and becomes something more like a candle, A candle is not dim, it illuminates an entire room. But with warmth, it lets you see human fragility, your own and everyone else's, without turning it into a problem to be diagnosed. Your depth is not a disorder. It was the intelligence of a nervous system doing the most extraordinary thing any nervous system can do: adapting. It built the radar because the radar was needed, but the environment that required it, it is not your whole life. And the version of you that needed to see everything to stay safe, they did their job. They got you here. You are here, and the awareness that once served as armor is ready, slowly, on your own timeline, to become something that doesn't just protect you, something that finally lets you live. You don't have to stop seeing clearly. You just have to stop carrying everything you see. The scan was never the problem. The weight was, and you are allowed, finally, to put some of it down. How long have you been carrying what was never yours to hold?